If not, you can move on to the in-class activity.
Right. All right. Let's switch to the in-class activity. So again, as I was discussing for where you start with the background and significance section, keep in mind that this is part of research strategy. So what I'm doing here in the beginning of this document, I'm writing that this is my research strategy, that this is not some random document. When you're going to be writing your homework assignments, make sure to follow exactly the same approach. Like, you know, this is not a random document. It's part A, background and significance of research strategy. In case if you want to put some additional information about the title of your proposal, your name, we will definitely accept that. This is good because we do want to know where this is coming from. So here I put this information about what this document is in this in the inner part of the document. So the next point is, as I was preparing for this class, I really was trying to think what would be the outline for this proposal. I'm sorry, for this background and significance. Again, keep in mind, you know, we're dealing with about maybe like something like 4 pages. So I was thinking maybe somewhere between 7 to 9 different points that I'd like to hit. And the things that I was kind of thinking about and trying to put them on paper. The place where I would probably start with, and again, here we're discussing that paper and that our project on the COVID-19 detection with paramagnetic nanoparticles, is to discuss why, is to start with why viral infections are important to address. So as obvious as it may seem, you really want to put it all on paper. And I would like to start with this first point. And then I would like to provide some facts about COVID-19, because in this context, we will also going to be discussing the applications to COVID-19, not to just any virus. And then I will state that rapid diagnostics is critical for addressing COVID-19. And this will be kind of my way of describing why developing rapid diagnostics is needed. And then my idea was to review diagnostic approaches for COVID-19. In other words, review the literature and discuss these approaches that are already in place. And by extension, I would also be covering potentially other viral infections. So what I'm really trying to do here, I'm really trying to put it not in the context of just COVID-19, because, you know, our expectation is that in 1 year, the disease is going to be kind of like maybe over, but really to think about future infections too. To put an additional spin for why this project is going to be significant. It may potentially go well beyond COVID-19. So here I will be discussing 2 methods. I believe I will be discussing PCR technique and antibody testing. If there is any other technique that you guys are aware of, let me know. Maybe we can put it on the map, and maybe that's something that we can discuss here too. And then, again, following the outline that I had in my presentation, I will be discussing the gap in field. So here my gap is the gap in the field of the detection technology. And my point here is, I really have 2 key points to hit. One is that PCR expression requires time, and accurate on-site testing is critical. So in case if you're really dreaming about doing on-site testing and on-site result, PCR is not really your friend because it requires multiplication of biological material. And then another point that I would like to hit and highlight here is, you know, antibody testing can be done on site, but it really portrays a delayed picture. This is not something that that is happening with the person right now. This means the person had already went through COVID-19 and his immune system has reacted. So this is kind of like delayed, and being able to do things kind of prospectively when the person is only getting infected is kind of critical. So I will finish this section with the gap, with describing what the gap is that there is that a rapid high throughput detection and high throughput on-site detection technology without PCR viral multiplication is needed. There is a huge typo because as we were saying, when you're drafting, try to put your thoughts on paper as quickly as possible, and that's exactly the motto that I was following here. So that will be my 3rd kind of section, and then the next section that I was dreaming about is to introduce a MAR-based approach, meaning cover the literature which discusses viral sensing in general, using that paper that we were discussing in class and describe its feature. Why? Because I need to educate my reviewers of how this technology works. Then I'm thinking of making a jump from briefly introducing our hypothesis, where we would be able to say, well, we're actually going to use this technology and we're going to apply it to COVID-19. So that this can kind of be our innovation when we're going to be discussing the innovative aspect. But here, because we're discussing the significance, we are thinking about significance. And as America said, we're thinking about the broad picture here. And here we're saying that this is the technology. So, and then we introduce our hypothesis that this sensing may work, and our technology that we aim to develop and validate in the context of this proposal. Now, next, I would like to put this phrase here, that the contribution of the proposed research is expected to be, and what I'm thinking to put here is will be the new technology for on-site high throughput detection of COVID-19 without the need for PCR multiplication of biological material. Next, I'm thinking about the significance statement. I really need to explain in the next section. And again, these are not sections. These are like bullet points for how I'm going to be expanding things later. But you know, as we're thinking, I'm trying to put everything on paper. And then I'm thinking about the significance statement. I really need to explain why this contribution would be significant. And the way I'm trying to think about this is our contribution will be significant because it will enable better diagnostics, better and how would you say prospectively faster, better, I'm grasping for word, it will enable better and more timely diagnostics of COVID-19 and other emerging viral infections. Next, I'm moving on to the discussion of, so these may not necessarily be like equal parts, but these are kind of like the bullet points that I was thinking about. And then I move into the discussion of benefits from our technology in case if it's all gonna work out. So what I'm thinking about this here is, you know, assuming that we will be able to do this, we will be enable faster detection. So it will consequently lead to potentially decreased morbidity through better diagnosis, improvement of medical outcomes, especially in case of patients where we need to know how bad is the viral load, which will not necessarily be the direct benefit, but you know, it's still a benefit which is kind of like a fringe benefit, but it's still worth discussing that at this point. So these will be my bullet points. Does anybody want to add anything to this section? And unfortunately, for some reason, I'm not seeing the participation in class. Meaning like I don't see the, for some reason, yeah, I don't need to figure it out, but certainly not today.
And I'm watching both the chat and the hand raising.
All right.
And so
if there is nothing there, so so my suggestion is then to potentially start expanding on these sections. So I will start from the very beginning because to me, you know, right in the beginning is kind of tough. my first point here is to discuss why viral infections are important to address and provide some facts about COVID-19. So the way I'm actually going to expand this section is, or at least the way I think I should be approaching this is to say that this is part of this section. Viral infections cause significant morbidity among population. The way I'm kind of thinking about this part is then to provide, so what kind of facts would I be providing? I would probably like to go and look for number of seasonal deaths from, let's say, flu, as an example. So I would be putting some literature references here and numbers. Then I'm following this outline where I would be putting some facts about COVID-19. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that COVID-19 is a significantly more virulent and more dangerous infection compared to seasonal flu. The global epidemics of 2019-2020 claimed over 500,000 lives. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to provide some facts about COVID-19 and discuss why this is important. Moreover, this infection caused tremendous, or resulted in a tremendous economic disruption, causing millions of lost jobs and trillions of dollars in lost economic activity. So I'm really trying to portray that this is a big problem here. As you're going to be writing your proposal.
And how are you going to deal with references now? Because you've said a lot of information that hasn't been referenced yet. So do you usually stop? Do you usually stop at this point and find your references, or what is your approach?
So my approach is actually, I'm actually going to do exactly the same, what you're suggesting. I'm actually going to stop, look for the references, and as I find the reference, I'm going to put relevant references here. So for any of these claims, guys, we have to come up with the literature reference. So for example, the way I would actually deal with this reference, I would probably go to coronavirus website,
So probably not a scientific article. This would probably be something from CDC or something that takes...
CDC, yeah, that would be another good source, yes. And what I would do then, I would use this information and I would actually create a reference link, create a reference record here. So when you go back to the EndNote, there is a way to create new references in case if the reference is not available itself. And what you do here, you click on the new reference, and then EndNote will offer a tremendous number of different choices. And the generic version is like journal article, but my goal is to kind of put a web page here, and then it will provide a corresponding field for the website or some other things. So title.
Right. So, I mean, I think the point here, folks, is that you can write your sentences and then go back and justify them with references, or the way that I do it actually is I will know what I want to say in a sentence, go find the article, and then rewrite the sentence if I need to make sure it matches the reference. And remember, your goal is to find as many primary references as possible. Maybe a few review articles here and there, but really the evidence that you state in your background should be backed up by primary research with experiments, right? So I like to kind of write while I read here because I find that to be the most efficient. But another approach would be to kind of write and write and write and then go back and fill in the references. I just find that to be more time consuming.
Either way is fine as long as you can do it.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully you've taken diligent notes on the background information you've been reading, and that way you can incorporate those references into your background sections. In addition to then realizing that you need a new reference because you're trying to make a new point, and then going and finding that reference and writing the sentence based on a new reference. So you'll be looking for more references to back up the arguments that you're making. If, for example, you're going to make new arguments that you've not really thought of before once you start writing.
Right, and in case if you remember which reference is that, like, by Johnson and coworkers.
Yeah, you could put a little tab in there, right?
Yeah, and then add the literature citations. So it really depends on your style, how you're going to be writing. But by the end of the day, as you expand in these bullet points, you should have these primary and secondary references. The way you can think about it is, significance and background is where you're probably going to have maybe, 3/4 of your references? That's
quite a few, yes.
Quite a few, right?
Most.
So if you're shooting for about 50 references in the end, which is kind of like the average, I would say, this means for background and for background and significance section, which is, let's say, 4 pages long, you're putting, 10 to 15 references per page, maybe more. Yeah, it's going to be very, very condensed.
And then remember, folks, the goal here is not to make the final draft of your background and significant page. You just want to come up with something that you can build off of. So get your thoughts on paper, add the references related to those, and then you can go back and refine those sentences and make them clear, concise, and impactful, right?
So I'm obviously not inserting the references here because otherwise it would just blow enormous amount of time.
Yeah, it's already 6:35. So
yes.
I feel like that shows kind of the process, and then, how to add the references while you're, making your arguments. Any questions about that process? I'm looking in both the chat and the raised hands, but I'm not seeing anything. So I guess that must be clear. Or maybe they're excited to get to their breakout sessions and do their elevator pitches, which is great.
Yay.
Which is great.
Right. So I'm going to save this and I'm actually going to post it under today's exercise. Again, keep in mind that this is kind of an outline. This is where you start. But to me, coming up with the outline is probably the most difficult. And my suggestion is spend some time, think about your storyline, point by point. Because if you don't do it, you'll have to rewrite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and can I make one point? I actually think it's called, you might be asking why it's called background and significance. And Ed just did talk about that, but to me, all the background information should be building for you to make a point about significance, right? So this first paragraph that he's writing is really making a point. It's giving the background information on COVID and mortality so that you can say, this is a big, huge problem in our health care industry. So it's all the background should eventually lead to a significance point. Background, significance point. So every kind of section should start and end talking about significance with the background information kind of tying it all together. That's the way I think it works really effectively, to kind of mingle background and significance so that the background really makes it clear why your problem is significant.
Right, and if you're discussing or reviewing some technique that's going to be essential in the context of your proposal, you really, at the end of that section, you really should explain why this is relevant to whatever you're going to be proposing.
Your proposal, yeah. Link it all together.
Don't review this. Don't review this stuff which is not really relevant to the big picture in the background and significance section. There are two ways to mitigate that. One way is don't discuss it at all because it's going to be derailing. And the second one, when it comes time for you to describe your approach, you may be putting some sentences and some literature citations in there when it's time to discuss a particular technique which is going to be used in your study, but it's not, well, if this technique may not be necessarily helpful to the big picture. So there are other places in the proposal where you would be able to do it. All right, I think we should wrap up
yep.
here.
Okay, I don't see any questions, and we've been talking for a few minutes to give them a little bit of time. So I think they're ready to move to the breakout sessions.
Fantastic.
All right, thanks everybody. As I wrote to you in the email, we have sent all of your AIMS pages to the faculty that will be reviewing them. The faculty are not your research advisor, it's others, just so that we don't have any conflicts there. Some of you, I think there's a question by Fuad. Okay, Fuad, go ahead, and Mike, was that a mistake or did you have a question, Fuad? Oh, let's say, his question is, when are we supposed to get feedback from our specifics? Okay, so I was actually answering that. I didn't even realize it. So we emailed all of the faculty on Tuesday, and we have given them the deadline of Monday, June 8th, which is before our next class, just because some of them are quite busy. My understanding is quite a few have already written their reviews to all of you. So they are coming out slowly. I would expect that you would get the reviews over the weekend if you haven't gotten them already. But the latest, we've asked them to get them to you by like noon on Monday. So hopefully you'll see those critiques. And please realize that the faculty are going to be, they're going to give you lots of constructive criticism. So please take it as constructive. They really want to help you to develop your proposal. So these may be ideas you hadn't thought of or you had thought of, but they didn't understand them. Either way, try to build your proposal into a better write-up based on their critiques.
Right. And really, in case if some of the critique may look like harsh, trust me, this is all better for you. Why? Because it will save you a lot of time later down the road when you, for example, need to significantly change the scope of your proposal. You don't want to do it 3/4 of the way. But I think,
did that answer your question? Your hand is still up, so I don't know if you want to speak.